Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting of Wednesday, April 18th, 2012. Could I have a roll call, please?
Justin Cobb, Don Sikowski.
Here.
Salem Derby.
Present.
Dan Hagan.
Present.
Joseph McCoy.
Here.
Chester Oglevitz.
Present.
Dan Rist.
Here.
Joy Winnie.
Here.
Nathan Ziegler.
Present.
Could I have approval of the minutes of April
So
4th,
moved.
2012?
Second.
Sorry, motion and second approval of the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Noes? Okay, motion passes. Moving on to public speak time. We do have Councilor Sikowski, as would like to approach the podium as a member of the public to make a statement. So, Councilor Sikowski.
Good evening. Hello, folks out there in the viewing audience. I don't think I have to introduce myself. You've seen my picture in the newspapers quite a bit in the last several months. Why my picture has to accompany the news articles is puzzling, because the people from Easthampton know what I look like. And people from out of town never recognize me and don't care who I am. To clear up some misconceptions, in a recent Gazette article regarding the Library Association meetings, they have always been posted on the City Hall bulletin board and the Gazette, and in the Gazette under the weekly meetings listings. Meetings were never held in secrecy, but very few citizens ever attended, although they were more than welcome. Dan Crowley's article in the Gazette suggested that 8 years of reports to the state were not sent in by the library. They were, in fact, sent in, and after searching, found by the state. We did file all the necessary reports when I was on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to come up and address the council? Please come to the podium and state your name and address. Okay, not seeing any. We can move on. Communications from elected officials and boards committee. Just as a footnote, Councilor Kopp unfortunately is ill tonight, so wasn't able to make the meeting, but we did talk earlier this morning about tonight's meeting. We did receive a letter from our attorney, John Fitzgibbon, in response to the Gazette article questioning our ability to go into executive session. Again, our attorney reiterated that he feels we have a strong argument to indeed go on to executive session. So for the May 4th meeting, we are going to schedule an executive session shortly following, immediately following our normal business to discuss what we had previously mentioned concerning Councilor Sikowski. So if anyone would like to see the letter, it will be available through the city clerk. Moving on, mayor communication. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. We did have a letter also from the retirement board. Again, this is also public record. There is a letter stating their budget relating to retirement costs and fees. And again, this is public record, so if you would like to see the budget for the retirement board, that is also available through the city clerk. I'm sorry now Mayor Tosnick.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. No formal report on your agenda, but I just wanted to bring you up to speed on the process with the budgeting. We got the final cherry sheet information yesterday based on the House Ways and Means budget, and there were some changes. I think I sent an email out to you with a link to that and a brief description in that link of what the changes were. We're likely going to move forward basing a budget on the House Ways and Means numbers. They do include that $171,000 payment that we got as an after the big start of the year payment this year as a part of the base. And so that payment is actually in the current budget. It offsets, it's a part of our revenue stream in the current budget, so that doesn't really change the way that we're positioned, but we're comfortable that we'll be able to use it in the budget at this time, because we're fairly hopeful that the Senate will follow suit. We won't know, and I was hoping that the Senate might actually have some activity this week, but they decided to not have any formal session this week, so we're not going to get any information. You will see a budget by your next meeting, and hopefully it'll be in your mailboxes by the end of next week.
I have a quick question. So the Senate budget was increasing local aid.
Senate budget hasn't come out. So
Oh,
the
okay.
governor's budget came out. and we use those cherry sheet numbers for now. And the governor's budget is essentially level funding, not including that $171,000 payment from, in fiscal 12, it was a payment from fiscal 11 surpluses. The House Ways and Means Committee just came out with a budget that includes that, adds a little bit of money to the Chapter 70 education aid, but at the same time updates the charter and choice numbers, and we get hit a bit harder on charter schools. So it sort of negates the $40 per pupil payment. Senate probably now, since they aren't having anything formal this week, we probably won't get anything. The budget will be produced probably before we hear anything from the Senate about what they might do. We were hoping that they would concur with the House. We're still hopeful that they might concur with the House. But the budget I give you, if state aid is reduced and we can't make it up in some other way in that budget, we may have to amend as we move it forward. But I do want to get you a document. The budget is essentially balanced with a little bit of fine tuning. The hardest part is at the end. There are really no new initiatives beyond attempting to return some of the lost time to the non-union employees. But we're not expecting any layoffs. We're not on the city side. I'm not sure. I can't really speak to the school side. They don't know what their number is yet. But they likely will try, if they do have to close the gap, they'll likely try to do that through attrition or retirement, that sort of thing. So that's just the update.
Okay. Any other questions for the mayor? Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just get a clarification on the date of the next council meeting?
May 4th.
That's a Friday.
Sorry, why was
May
I?
2nd.
May 2nd, I'm sorry.
May 2nd?
I was so sure of that. So,
Sorry to interrupt.
no, thank you for the correction. So again, the executive session obviously will be May 2nd. Sorry for that miscommunication there. Moving on to standing committees, Rules, Government Relations, Councilor Rist.
Yes, Mr. President. Councilors, you've all received this evening our version of our new Rule 19 Code of Ethics. This was passed 3-0 by the Rules of Government Relations Committee last evening, and we intend to ask you to vote on it with any of your own thoughts, amendments, et cetera, at the next meeting. Attached to this paper is 4 pages of the House of Representatives Code of Ethics, Rule 16A, in which much of our language was paraphrased from. You'll see where it's marked we've dealt with certain aspects and placed it into our own rule. I wanted to make it clear that in our opinion, we hope this rule becomes a deterrent rather than necessarily being acted on, as we haven't had one. Very few small cities or towns have this, if any. There are some larger cities that do have similar code of ethics rules, such as that of the State House of Representatives. Anyway, at the next meeting, we will ask if anyone wishes to discuss it or amend it and move on it at that time, giving you time to look at it. Certainly, I'll answer any questions this evening, or if there are questions in the meantime, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Councilor Winnie?
I'm not going to be here for the next meeting. I'm going to
Right.
be out of town. But just going through this in the first paragraph, I really have some issues with the last sentence of your first paragraph. Furthermore, this code of ethics shall apply where the conduct or activity of a city council's member's personal life, as can be reasonably foreseen, becomes a subject of general public notice.
On page 4.
On the front page, on the first paragraph.
I know, I'm telling you where we got it from. And I've also been asked by Councilor Ziegler to look at that too, because it's unclear. If you look at number 4 on page 441 of the House standards under ethical standards in private life, Councilor Cobb, who wrote this initially, paraphrased that, and I do believe it needs further clarification, and I agree. The conduct of a member or staff slices out, near the bottom of that, notice as a result of the member or staff's own conduct or activity with the member or staff reasonably should have foreseen would be made public by others. In other words, that would suggest that if you are out in some private situation but doing something that might be unethical, and others, you should have foreseen that others might make it public. That's what, where we got it from, in other words.
I think that you missed a critical piece of that, though, where it says ethical standards in private life. Members and staff have the right to privacy, and to conduct of their personal lives is outside the purview of these rules.
But what we're saying, except where a member or staff's personal life becomes the subject of general public notice.
Understand, but I think that you need to include that first sentence into that, making it clear to everyone that what we do in private is not subject to the public or the censure of the city council.
Unless you can reasonably foresee that someone in that private setting would make it public.
Only if it would pertain, I think, my
Well-
own personal opinion, only if it would pertain to the conduct of becoming or being in the position of a city councilor, not in your private life. And I'm not saying this out of context, but I'll just put this out there. If one of us was having an affair or something and somebody found out about it, I mean, would that come under censure, under the city council? Or, who's the judge and jury on this, and what perceives as out of conduct, into conduct, or whatever? I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay?
I'm not using that as, I'm doing it, I'm not, but, we don't need the press going on that one.
I'm not going there.
Or anybody else, but, I'm just saying, what we do in our private lives should be, again, private, and our families, and our children, and our grandchildren, and cousins
Well,
and
no
families.
one's
So-
implying that. I can see how you might see that. In my opinion, though, you're always a counselor, and if you're in a public affair and you make racist or degenerative
Okay,
remarks
that's
in
different.
in a private situation where you're at, maybe even at a party at your own home, and you've invited members of the public to this party who you think are your friends, and you didn't foresee that they would possibly public your remarks, to me, you're a counselor in that situation. But we could disagree on this all night. But I think it does need clarification from the point of view of the language that I believe the House of Representatives has touching upon. So we'll look at that. And at the next meeting, if there's others, I believe the Rules Committee can certainly take it up again and take it back to the drawing board. That particular section, I believe, might need some work.
Okay.
But on the other hand, I would like all of you, in other words, to come back with any thoughts on this.
And the second paragraph, where it says, "and other action deemed appropriate by the council."
Such as an apology.
Oh,
Just gives the Rules Committee
Okay.
the authority to recommend, instead of censure, something else.
then I think we should probably clarify what kind of action, instead of just saying any other action. What kind of action would we be able to take? I mean,
It's a rule
I'm just
in which.
saying it's out there, it's gray, it's just,
I don't agree. I think
But-
the city council can take any action or disagree with any action the Rules Committee makes at any time, so. Counselor
Well, wait,
Derby has a question.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I just wanted to say maybe, maybe the earlier discussion, and I know we're not going to debate this now, but as going back to the drawing board to clarify that one piece, maybe one of the pieces that could go in there that might fix it a little bit would be the ability to perform our duties as needed, because the example that Joy gave, that wouldn't necessarily impact your duties as a counselor. However, if the example you gave, if you alienate a constituency, then that's going to, impact your ability to do what you need to do.
Right.
So I think
And that
maybe-
could happen in a private setting, is what
Right.
I'm saying.
Right.
So what I'm saying is this is good. I'm glad to hear the counselors have some ideas and the Rules Committee. There's no time limit on when we develop this rule. So this is good. I'd like to hear in writing from counselors who can't make it the next meeting, and then I think I would certainly recommend as chair to go back to the drawing board and come up with better language. I'm certainly happy with that.
Yeah, I think this is just the point bringing up some areas that maybe next meeting would be premature for a final vote on, especially, unfortunately,
Certainly,
two
certainly.
of our meetings, our members will be missing. Councilor Winnie?
and I will caution all of us, and I make this caution very strong, that no matter what we come up with, we still all have to respect the fact that we all in this country have a constitutional right to freedom of speech.
Okay?
I'm just putting that out there, okay? There's many organizations out there that we may or may not agree with. We may have very strong feelings about them being out there and promoting whatever it is that they promote, and we may or may not agree with it. But the down and dirty is, constitutionally, they have the right to speak how they feel, because that's a given right to us under the U.S. Constitution. So,
You don't have the right to discriminate, Counselor Winnie, excuse me.
I'm not saying
We
that.
could save this
Say
this
that,
type of
Tammy.
discussion.
I
for-
didn't say that.
Anyone else want to comment?
No, I don't.
Greg,
Counselor Hagan.
just one quick comment. I just received this evening, and,
Well, I
you know, I'm
think
glad
it's time
that,
for it to be
no,
educated.
and, you know, I do think, you know, again, we should take our time and get it right. I just, you know, whether that's the next meeting or one more, I mean.
Well, probably,
you
it
know,
sounds like we'll need some more time.
That's all I'm saying. I think we should do it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think it's a great opportunity for first draft reading.
Well, yeah, and, you know, the three of us are trying to do something
It's tough.
that, again, we looked at language that the House of Representatives had, because they are representatives in the public, and we gleaned a lot of it from that. So that doesn't mean it's necessarily right for Easthampton.
Right. Again, thank you for your work on this. It's not an
All
easy
right.
subject.
Thank you.
done
That
with your report?
concludes, yes.
Great, terrific. I think I'll take a motion then to open public hearings.
So moved.
Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, public hearings are open. Second, Councilor Hagan's night. So first one, take it away. Councilor Hagan.
We only have two tonight. The first one, I'll do a second reading on it, is an interdepartmental transfer requesting request of the following appropriation, the amount of $40,000 to be transferred from the Chapter 32B holdover account to the liability insurance holdover account. From the transfer from the Chapter 32B holdover in the amount of $23,000 and the liability insurance holdover in the amount of $17,000 to be transferred to the gasoline diesel fuel expense. The request is for the following purpose: to provide for an expected shortfall in the citywide motor fuel budget. It passed 2-0 by the Finance Committee. I think the mayor certainly could speak to it. I think this is, as everyone knows, fuel prices have gone up, including the cities, and I think it's just to be on the safe side that we have enough money to get to the end of the fiscal year, but I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Councilor Hagan got it right on the head as usual. And the money's coming from accounts that had surplus holding for commitments that in the case of the 32B account that we didn't need. And so that's money that would have returned to the budget as free cash at the end of the year if we didn't need it. In the case of the liability insurance, those funds were held over because there are some open insurance claims, and there are various deductibles on the insurance claims under the city's policy with Maya, depending upon the kind of claim. So they range from about automobile, the lowest deductible we have is $500, but the highest is $10,000 per case in the case of discrimination cases. So we have several cases. There's one or two sewer line backup cases and that sort of thing that are out there. But we haven't been billed those deductibles. Generally speaking, that doesn't happen until after the case settles or we've exceeded that in expenses on the case. And so the money is available in the foreseeable future, assuming that we're probably not going to get billed for any of this until after July 1. And so that money would come out of next year's appropriation.
Any questions for the mayor? Councilor Hagan?
Just if we don't use all the gas and
Certainly,
fuel,
if
it's
it-
going to go back to free cash.
Exactly.
I mean,
Patty
if
tends to be a bit conservative when it comes to, if she's going to ask for money, she's going to ask for enough. And so this may exceed the need to some small extent. But if it does, then that money will not be expended in that budget year. If there's any open bills, we'll hold over what is left for open billing, and the rest will revert to the free cash account as we close the books on June 30.
Now, is this a typical end-of-year physical appropriation, or did October a bigger dimming?
Well, it looks like the fuel price escalation is what's really driving this, not so much the consumption. Yeah, we did have a little bit more consumption, and we worked a little bit harder during that week and you consume some more fuel, but we didn't consume the kind of fuel we would normally consume during a snow season. And so there was an offset there. This is really driven by the increase in the price of fuel from one year to the next. And next year's appropriation is going to have to reflect some increase to allow for that. It doesn't look like they're going down.
Any other questions for the mayor? Well, let's have that, Councilor Derby.
So, Mr. Mayor, this is a big bill.
Sure.
And, you know, I don't think gas is going to get any cheaper. So have we been starting to think yet about some programs that we can kind of embark on as a city to try to reduce our fuel consumption? You know, a few weeks ago we passed the new language for the green vehicles ordinance, and one of the things that allowed us to have alternative compliance, you know, to have our police cars, et cetera, fire trucks and the non-fuel efficient vehicles, was looking at policies and programs like carpooling incentives, preferred parking for employees with hybrids, bicycle racks, incentives to encourage people to bike to work, and things like that. I'm just wondering, I mean, we haven't started, okay. And
we're looking at replacing vehicles with more fuel efficient vehicles. The last vehicle we replaced that would have qualified was in fact replaced with a fuel efficient vehicle. It was a sedan used in the Department of Public Works. We don't see an issue about preferred parking here. You know, carpooling doesn't. It's a small group of employees, and so that's kind of a difficult one to try to put together. Bike rack would be a nice idea, but we have a fence that people lean their bikes against now.
how about like incentives for employees to ride their bikes, things like that, you know? And also, I mean, I guess that's not where it ends for
I
me.
mean, I think if you want to assign something like that to a city council committee and come up with some ideas and suggestions, we'd be happy to
And how about managers' use of vehicles like to take home? That I imagine that's kind of a perk for some of the upper level administrators.
Well, let's see, police chief, fire chief, DPW director, and I believe all three of the public works supervisors have a vehicle that they take home. That's it.
Okay.
We could certainly look at that. You know, police and fire chiefs, I'm not even going to consider saying that they shouldn't have an emergency response vehicle. DPW director is essentially the first call when stuff doesn't quite go right. Highway supervisor needs to get in and out. I mean, we could certainly talk to the Board of Public Works about that allowance. And I don't want to go much further because I'm not certain. There have been some changes in personnel, and I don't know whether the board has continued certain policies, but it was their policy that that management staff that had to be first response would be able to respond with a public vehicle.
Right.
But we can certainly look at those sorts of policies as well. To be quite honest, this is really driven by, the cost of fuel is really driven by police, fire, public works, heavy vehicles. I mean, you know, the number of sedans that we have is pretty minuscule. But we do have them. I mean, you know, we have a fire inspector that uses a public vehicle every day, day in, day out. Doesn't take it home, but it's available to him. We have a Pilot here, a Honda Pilot that we got through a drug raid. Probably not the most fuel efficient vehicle. I think it gets around town about 17. But we acquired it long before we became a green community, and it was free. But that's shared. I've used it. The assessor's department uses it for field surveys when he goes out. The finance directors used it. Others in the community use it when you've got to go some distance.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm
But
not
really
passing
interested-
judgment.
we're really
I just feel
interested
like you know this isn't going to get any cheaper, and so we should start thinking how are we going to deal with this increasing.
No, and an energy committee would be a good thing for us to try to resurrect, and I hope that might come. Here's an opportunity for a plug. Planning board is moving forward with the idea of bringing an implementation committee together for the master planning process. And this really is a part of, as you know, part of the master planning process. So I think if we can support that as much as we can, there'll be some folks that might be able to work on some of this this stuff. And they're all, I mean, honestly, it's all good ideas. It's just not something that we've been able to carve time out for yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing, just to comment, I want to make a remark. There's nothing wrong with what Salem is talking about, but the fuel cost this evening, the way I understand it, we're talking about is for our heavy-duty dump trucks and our one-ton dump trucks and our heavy equipment, they're on diesel, and there's, as far as I know, there's no energy-efficient vehicles out there for those, in that class of vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Winnie?
Actually, that's what I was gonna say. I'm in charge of my fuel overages, my fuel adjustment clause in my buses, and then my own buses are using the fuel, and there's really not a whole lot I can do about it as far as the price goes. Do we bid off the LPVEC?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
then-
we're on spot.
And you're on spot,
We
which
tried,
is-
we tried to do the lock-ins.
Right.
There's a premium to lock a price.
Right,
But we just have not been able to hit the market right.
right.
So we're spot plus a margin, and it's pretty good. Most people, you're probably on it as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, we are, but I also use it in my contract as being the base price for my buses.
For your bus fuel.
For my fuel adjustment clause, so I watch that every month, and I see the prices, and they're just going through the roof, and there's nothing any of us can do about it, so.
Well, but we'll try what we can, honest.
Counselor Williams, do you have a?
No, my question was
Okay.
how we purchase it. and
Any more
cost.
for the mayor before we leave? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to address the council concerning this appropriation? Being seen, Counselor Hagan.
In form of a motion, I'd make the following motion, that we appropriate $40,000 to be transferred from 32B holdover, the amount of $23,000, and from the liability insurance holdover in the amount of $17,000, it'd be transferred to the gasoline and diesel fuel expense in the total amount of $40,000 to provide for the expected shortfall in the citywide motor fuel budget.
Second.
Okay, motion and second for the approval of the $40,000 to the gas and diesel fuel expense. Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
The second public hearing tonight, I'll do a second reading. Request following appropriation interdepartmental transfer. The amount requested is $77,000 to be transferred from Chapter 32B school active holdover in the amount of $50,000 and Chapter 32B city active holdover in the amount of $27,000. And they're to be transferred to the Chapter 32B school related activity in the amount of $38,500 and the 32B school-related retired in the amount of $38,500. The purpose, for the following purpose, to provide funds for the expected shortfall in the health insurance budget. Again, this was approved 2-0 by the Finance Subcommittee. I will just say, basically, I'd let the mayor comment. I know this is, again, moving from accounts that we have some holdover into accounts that are run short, but I'll let the mayor.
This was held over in the same account, and it's staying in that same account and just moving to this year's payment. The bills that we didn't get last year, we have this year. Normally, in the past, we would use an intra-department transfer that's allowed under the charter, but the auditor has indicated that she's not comfortable using that process, and asked that we come to the city council for that sort of stuff, so we're here. Last year, we did it without coming here. We used the process that's allowed in the charter, and the last auditor was comfortable with that, had gotten assurances from the outside auditing firm that it was fine, but people change and their outlooks at things change as well.
Any questions for the mayor? Counselor?
Just a comment on that, Mr. Mayor. I have no problem with transparency, and if this change
Oh, sure. I
is
mean, yeah,
welcomed by me,
whatever.
I'm glad that we're
It,
getting it this way,
yeah.
and rather than it happening. We've had our disagreements in the past, so I don't think this will slow down or.
Well, it does slow it down significantly, but it's what we have to do. I mean,
It's transparent, and I like it.
Until I take the time to get it corrected.
All right.
Any additional comments? from the mayor? Okay. Counselor Hagan. I'm sorry, is anyone else from the public who would like to come to the podium to address the council concerning this appropriation? Not being seen, Counselor Hagan.
This is in the form of a motion. I make a motion that we approve the following appropriation, the amount $77,000 to be transferred from the Chapter 32B school active holdover account in the amount of $50,000 and the 32B city active holdover in the account in the amount of $27,000 transferred to the Chapter 32B school-related active fund in the amount of $38,500, and the 32B school-related retired in the amount of $38,500.
Second.
For the following purpose,
Yep.
shortfall in health insurance budget.
I'm sorry. Second.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second for the interdepartmental transfer of the 77,000 to provide funds for an expected shortfall in the health insurance budget. Any additional comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Motion to close the public hearings.
For a second?
Moved.
Second.
Motion and a second for closed public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Public hearing is closed. I think it's still your ball, Counselor Hagan. We're going to go right at finance.
I know there's a couple of items under new business, which I'll get to later, but I will say with finance, our next meeting is April 25th at 6 p.m. And then also I wanted to announce that we're going to hold the subcommittee meetings on the budget, as the mayor has indicated later. Hopefully we'll have the budget by the next meeting. And the dates for the budget hearings, in which we'll go through each department, will be May 9th, 10th, and 15th, with an alternate date of the 23rd if for some reason we haven't gotten through it. But hopefully we could get through it in the 3 evenings, the 9th, the 10th, and the 15th. And this will be at 6 o'clock also in room 1.
Okay. Thank you. Public safety, there is nothing. Appointments, Counselor Winning.
Thank you. We met tonight at 5:45. We have one mayoral appointment in front of us, and we met and we voted 3-0 to forward the appointment to full committee. So I will make this in the form of a motion that we appoint Marcia Morrison to ECA Plus Committee with her, the term of expiration of December 31st, 2014, as proposed by the mayor.
Second.
A motion and a second for appointment of Marcia Morrison to ECA Plus Committee. Any additional comments or discussion? I would just say, I'm on the Appointments Committee. I can't think of anyone better qualified for that. She's always involved in the Bear Fest and so everything arts in Easthampton. So a great addition to the committee. So I approve of that. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Thank you. I have no more report tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There was made, there's something. Ordinance, Councilor Derby?
Thank you, Mr. President. So we met last Wednesday, April 11th. We discussed the bicycle ordinances, and that discussion is going to continue on next Wednesday, so the 25th, April 25th at 6 p.m., where I believe the applicant, the person who wanted to put this forward, is going to give a presentation. And I'm also hoping to have a representative from the police department there to give the police department's perspective on the changes that we're looking at. Yeah, that concludes my meeting.
Okay, thank you. Property, Councilor Psychowski.
No report this evening.
Okay. There is no old business pending. New business, Councilor Hagan.
There's 3 interdepartmental transfers. With the permission of the council, I'll do a first reading on all 3 and then make one motion to send them to the Finance Subcommittee. The first interdepartmental transfer is a request for the following appropriation. Amount requested $500 to be transferred from the streetlight holdover account in the amount of $500 and transferred to the licensing board clerical in the same amount, $500. For the following purpose, to provide funds for a shortfall in the licensing board budget. The second interdepartmental transfer is a request for the following appropriation in the amount of $2,319.40. This would be transferred from the landfill professional service holdover account in the amount of $2,319.40 to transfer to the landfill professional services in that same amount, $2,319.40. For the use in the following purpose, to provide funds for a possible shortfall in the budget. And the final interdepartmental transfer is for the following appropriation in the amount of $12,500. This would be transferred from the short-term interest expense in the amount of $10,000 and the general reserve fund in the amount of $2,500 and transferred to the assessor's professional service in the amount of $12,500. And this is to be used for the following purpose: to provide funding for appraisal of real property and expert testimony for an appellate tax court hearing. I'd like to make one motion that we move all three of these interdepartmental transfers to the finance subcommittee.
Second.
A motion, a second to the previous really read interdepartment transfers to finance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. And Counselor Derby, I believe you have.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to move the request from Casey Douglas for an over quota liquor license to ordinance.
Second. Okay, a motion, a second to move the request for an over liquor license to ordinance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. I guess that concludes business, so I'll take a motion, accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, thank you. See you May 2nd. Thank you very much.